G'day. Pardon me. AJ Mahar here. In this video, I'd like to do a response to a comment in a much calmer way. As I've mentioned in a video prior, the microphone's kind of stuck over there. That, yeah, never mind. So, on the video I did BPD no self other reference, people with BPD seek identity through you. A commenter writes, question, could a BPD, so a person with BPD, feel more attracted to a partner who is close to what their sense of self is or was in order to try to find the sense of self? And I find that this is a fascinatingly interesting question. And it kind of speaks to what I talked about in my previous video, which may or may not be up yet, but coming soon on the dilemma of people with codependency around these issues. So basically, let's start with the fact that no, the answer is no. A person with BPD, certainly not on any conscious level, but a person with BPD is not attracted more to one partner or another because they because the partner would be closer to their sense of self, what their sense of self is or was. So that can't even happen unconsciously. And why? Because really, truly, maybe I need to do more on this. And it's not the easiest, don't mean to insult anyone's intelligence. It is not the easiest aspect of the complexity of borderline personality and its multi-layered, multifaceted complexity to understand. People with BPD have lost the self. If they aren't treated, they don't know who they are. It's more than unstable identity. They really don't know who they are. So again, there can be variance around this. Not everybody with BPD untreated is the same. It depends on what happened and to what degree the adverse experience was in their childhood. So it's really important to consider that. But people with BPD don't have, so they have a lost self at the point of arrested emotional development. So they can't be, or having any awareness of, looking for a partner, being more attracted to a partner who's close to what their sense of self is or was. Because here's the point I really want to drive home. They don't have that sense of self from which to even in an unconscious way, to see something in a partner, even unconsciously more, that would, like as a commenter asked, make them attracted more to a partner who's close to what their sense of self is or was. No, because they have no sense of the lost self, which is evacuates, stops growing before or at the age of 2 with the emotional arrested development, right? That's when the otherwise burgeoning authentic self is emotionally arrested and the false self rises. And a person with BPD, and the false self in BPD is not as strong as the false self in NPD, and there are differences, but they don't even have that sense of self. And so as the question the commenter asked, if they'd be more attracted, I'm sorry for repeating it again, to a partner who is close to what their sense of self is or was. Well, again, not to go over it again, but no, because they don't know what their sense of self is or was. Because when it, quote, was, unquote, it could have been when they were weeks old to months old or a toddler. So there's no knowing one sense of self at that age. And then the commenter continued, in the question, in order to try to find the sense of self. Well, here's the real dilemma, and here's what people with codependency face in these relationships. The reality that people with untreated BPD who have an arrested emotional development, at which time the self is lost to them. That fragmented ego I talked about, the child state of ego fragments off. It's not DID, it's not that. But the point is, so this quote self that they would have otherwise been, they don't know it all anymore. And they're living through a false self. So there is no way to find, for people with BPD to find an actual sense of self, because without going to treatment and therapy. And so they're not going to be more attracted to a partner based on because of it reminds them of a sense of self, or it might bring more back a sense of self, because that is a very adverse experience, and it is at the core, along with abandonment, fear, and attachment difficulties, of what creates BPD. And the loss of self is a result of misattunement, affect synchrony, and any other adverse experience that's had in very infancy to toddlerhood. Because a lot of people will have this arrested emotional development considerably before the age of 2. So, and that's hard to measure. So make no mistake about it that people with BPD have a lost self, and if they're untreated, they're not going to know much about that. The more people get treatment, not DBT therapy particularly, but psychodynamic modalities of treatment, process work, understanding and finding. It's, one way to put what is BPD treatment really? Well, one thing I would say about it in a psychodynamic modality, it is the search for self. It is a search for the lost self. It is trying to get back to that original core wound, which isn't just abandonment and attachment, it's also loss of self. And so the self needs to be found, and can be found in healing, in treatment for BPD. I've been through it, and I know this to be true. And I remember how daunting that process was and what it involved. And the bottom line is, people with BPD will not find themselves unless they go to therapy and stick with it, and long term. And then it is possible and doable. As I said in a video recently, on that topic we don't want to talk about, I don't want to anyway, that I really do have a very empowered and strong sense of self, and have had for 30 years now, a little over 30 years. And so I'm not, I have BPD anymore, because that's anathema right there. I can't have a strong and empowered sense of self if I still had BPD. So, people are still going to say what they say on that score, but they're not using their noggins, are they? How would I sit here, not only working with clients for 30 plus years, doing videos for the time I've been doing videos, and specifically the last 5 years, more importantly, because whatever, how could I be talking about this the way that I do if I hadn't healed and recovered from it? Because I wouldn't have any awareness about it. Anyway, so no, the answer to the commenter's question is simply no, unfortunately not. They're not going to be attracted to any individual partner that seems more close to the self that they thought they knew, or kind of know, as the commenter put in different words, because they don't know, because there is no sense of self, and because they're not even aware, emotionally, or really get it intellectually if they're untreated. So they might have ideas about what it means, but the answer is just no on that score. And so what I'd like to probably just not drive home, but again really make clear for people out there, codependents still wanting more information on BP and trying to understand them so much, when maybe you should be trying to understand yourself a little bit better more often. I don't know, right? People with BPD, arrested emotional development, loss of self, living through a false self. People with NPD, same thing, different age and stage of childhood development where the arrest occurs, and they have a much stronger false self, and they do not have the emotionality, people with BPD, and they don't have really capacity or ability to have empathy. And people with BPD do, but it gets suspended a lot. So, but anyway, that goes to the difference between the two, which isn't the focus of this video. So I hope you found it helpful, that it was a great question. I understand where the question comes from. And where the question comes from, may I just say, with all due respect to the commenter, it's a really still deeply reflective of codependence to be asking that question, because again, do you really need to understand that now if you're an X, or do you need to understand more about you? But it's still a really good question, and I hope my answer is helpful. And no doubt I'll be doing more on this topic, because here's a big central piece that I'm not saying I'm the only one on YouTube that would address it, but maybe the way that I do address it, and other people get stuff so wrong, never mind. This is a really core piece of what obviously is difficult for a lot of people to understand. So give me your feedback on if this was helpful, any questions you have further, and is this one of the harder concepts and aspects of what BPD really is and means? Is it more difficult to understand? And are you still trying to understand it? And with what I've offered so far, are you still confused or still wondering more? Because like the commenter is, but I mean that with all due respect, in that it was a really excellent question. So I hope that it's helpful to the commenter and others. Take care. I just need to find the freaking button. I apologize. Take care.